circumstances of it, but life is full of circumstances. And the battery is dead. It says it's a low battery. I don't have no idea what it's got in it. I can't do everything. See? She does everybody that way, Kevin. Don't feel so bad, man. And I'm like 70 years old. I ought to know how to do something like that. Amen. Let's get our Bibles this morning and look at Exodus chapter 15. And we'll try to get started. Miss Mary Ann so aptly pointed out this morning that I was so loud I didn't need a microphone. And I know that, but the preacher might want to know what I preach, so I try to know. She's liable to cut my tires or something like that. Oh, I get that a lot. It's okay. It's all good. I get that a lot. A lot of places I go, I hear that. It's all right. The blessing in having a wife that's so spiritual, and everybody likes her so much, because we even have churches that say we support Diane, but not you. It's okay. It's all good. I used to have missionaries. I tell them I supported their children, but I didn't care that much about them. But amen. Oh, success. Hello, world. Yeah, that's better. I said that's what the little country preacher in North Carolina did up in the mountains. They had a little radio station up there to go about over 2 counties, and he said he'd get on there every Saturday morning. He said, "Hello, world." All right, now there we go. It's amazing the things that will stop the service. There we go. Amen. Well, it is good to be in the Lord's house, and I like to be around people I pick with a little bit too, so it's a good thing. Amen. Exodus chapter 15, if you found your place there, look with me down to verse number 22. As I travel and have traveled, and if I preach this here, somebody throws something at me or stop me or something, we try to be good about writing down what I preach where, but I didn't see where I'd preach this anywhere here. So as I travel, I notice that most people, to some degree, no matter how good the church is or how well the church seems to be functioning, there's at least somebody in the church, sometimes a lot of people in the church are dealing with bitterness, and they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to deal with it properly. They don't know how to deal with it appropriately. And I want to try to help you this morning. And I really, honestly, when I got here yesterday, I have no idea what I was going to preach. And I prayed about it yesterday, coming down the road as best I could. Of course, when you drive down the road a lot, you do a whole lot of praying on the road. Amen. I was praying, God, give me some direction about what to do. And last night, please give me some direction about what to do. And he finally did this morning about 5 o'clock, give me some direction on what to do. So he pointed me this way. So I'm going to have to assume that I'd not preach this here. And if I did, God said, preach it again. So look at verse 22. It said, "So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur. They went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink of the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore the name of it was called Marah. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, What shall we drink? And he cried unto the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, which when he had cast it into the waters were made sweet. There he made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them, and said, If thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and wilt do that which is right in his sight, will give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians. For I am the Lord that healeth thee. And they came to Elim, where there were 12 wells of water, and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the waters. Let's go to the Lord. Lord Jesus, we love you again. Thank you for letting us be here today. Now, Lord, please let us be able to try to help somebody today. Lord, I believe there's someone here today, no doubt, that's struggling with the matter of bitterness. Lord, I pray you'd help us today to say everything that ought to be said and steer away from things that should not be said. And what you do, we'll thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. They've traveled 3 days. 3 in the Bible is a number of completeness or completed redemption. Or we could say it's a time for another test. And realize anytime God takes us to another level, there's always going to be something else there we're going to have to deal with. Got a preacher friend in Yadkinville. He oftentimes says this, and I've seen it be so true over the years. He said, another level, another devil. In other words, when you reach another level with God, there'll be another trouble, another demon, another devil, another problem there you'll have to deal with. You know what? The problem is this: what do we do when we encounter a bitter time in our life? Everybody's got some kind of bitterness. Some have dealt with it, and some have not. Some are doing a good job of hiding it, some are not. I've seen a lot of people over the years that they would stand maybe and testify about how they got victory over some bitter thing that had happened in their life, only to send me an email the next morning or to give me, if I'd get a phone call, and they would just reiterate everything, replay the whole thing all over again. And finally this person quit calling me when I said, you stood in church and you lied. What did I stand in church and lie about? I said, you stood in church yesterday morning and said you had the victory over this thing, but yet you've spent the last 30 minutes telling me that you haven't got the victory over it. See, some people are very good at hiding things in public, but in their private life or in their life of their closest friends, it's a whole nother story. When we think about these words, and words mean something in the Bible, the Shur, said that we're in Shur. Shur is a desert place. And Marah simply means bitterness. Now, boy, that must have been some mighty bitter water if they named the place a name that simply means bitterness. You say, well, what's that got to do with me and what's that got to do with anything? Well, let me tell you some things about bitterness in your life, and I'm going to try to get down to time today or permit, I think it will. But the first thing is, number one, if you've got bitterness or you've had something happen to you that has caused bitterness in your life, number one, you're going to have to face the reality of your bitterness. Face the reality of your bitterness. Can I tell you something about bitterness? It's not going to go away. You can't run from it. You can't get around it. Think about the children of Israel. They had a great need right here. They had to have some water. They'd been in the desert place. They'd been in the dry place. They were in a time of need, and they needed nourishment. And then they come to this place. Can I say this? They have exactly what they need at this place. It is just not exactly what they want it to be. They're totally dehydrated. They've got to have some nourishment. They've got to have some water. But they taste the water. They did not say the water was poison. They said the water was bitter. Can I tell you that even bitter water will sustain you? Amen. We go to a lot of places. We don't drink the water anywhere we go. We use bottled water everywhere we go. because we were in Ohio a few years ago, and we'd been there about 2 weeks, and the pastor just nonchalantly over supper one night said, "Y'all not drinking the water over there where you're camped at, are you?" I said, "Yeah." "Oh, don't drink the water in Ohio. All the water in Ohio is contaminated." He's a Culligan man, so he knows this stuff, and he's naming off. I said, "Well, what do you propose we do?" He said, "I'm going to bring you some bottled water to use," and we just kind of got in the habit of doing that. Now, we didn't think there's anything wrong with the water. It didn't taste the best in the world, but I'm used to drinking well water. I'm used to drinking country well water from North Carolina. Trust me, it's good water. It's better than anything bottled you can get anywhere. But when you drink water and it's bitter and it's bad and it tastes bad, I mean, it just ain't nothing you can do to make it no better. But it will get you wet. And it will hydrate you. But the nation of Israel said, "This water is bitter." And then they turned on the preacher. Is that not what they did? Verse 24, the people murmured against Moses, saying, "What shall we drink?" Of course, if Moses had been my pastor, he said, "There's water, help yourself." This is kind of a little side note, but I'll put it in right here anyway. So that's the way a lot of times we leave church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, we say water was bitter. That was bitter. I didn't like that message. I didn't like that message. But it did the job, didn't it? You see, sometimes we may not necessarily like what we get, but it's what we need. And it will do the job to sustain us. My mother, I might have mentioned this before, my mama used to give us something called syrup of black drought. Anybody ever drunk syrup of black drought? That's the very reason why I will not drink Dr. Pepper. I don't even like to smell Dr. Pepper. It's the nastiest mess and nasty stuff in the world. But my mama thought that syrup of black drought would cure anything from the common cold to cancer. And if you got a sniffle or you got a cough, watch out. She'd call it, "You getting a dose." And she'd get out that big tablespoon, and man, and I'm feeling better. Well, come, this won't hurt you. It won't hurt you. You need it anyway. That's the way a lot of preaching is. We say, "I don't really want it. It's nasty. It tastes bad. I don't want that. Oh, I don't want that." And your pastor's saying, "Yeah, but it'll be good. You need it." But see, in Moses' case, they started griping, and then Moses called out to God and said, "What are we going to do now?" Well, we see in this few verses right here, really the key to how to deal with bitterness. Verse 25, "And he cried unto the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, which when he had cast it into the waters were made sweet. There he made them a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them." In times of bitterness, number 2, you got to put God right in the middle of it. I don't know about you, but I can't think about a tree without thinking about a cross. I think about what Jesus did for us. I think about in Jesus' case that it was not a beautiful tree. I think it was probably an unsightly tree that the cross was made out of. But I think about when God created the earth, He looked down across the annals of time and He saw that tree. And He knew what that tree would be one day. But I think about this. I think about when Moses saw this tree. When God showed him a tree, and he saw that tree. I don't believe it was a beautiful flowery tree, but I think it was maybe a gnarly, an unsightly, an ugly tree. But he took that tree and he cast it into the place of bitterness. Can I say that one day God's only Son literally hung between heaven and hell, and He took the bitterness of death for us, and He took the bitterness and ungodliness of sin for us, and He took the bitter cup of separation from His Father for us, and when Moses cast it into the water, look at that verse again. Verse 25, showed him a tree which when he had cast it into the waters. Can I tell you that if you'll put God in the middle of your bitterness, I believe He'll not only fix your water, but He'll fix the water of those around you. You have got to not only face the reality of your bitterness, but in times of bitterness, you've got to put God in the middle of the bitterness. Now, I want to try to make this illustration if I can, and just kind of bear with me. I usually do this a little bit different, and I like to use illustrations because the people I pastored had to have visual stuff. They couldn't just pick up on what you said. We're not, but just suppose today, for illustration purposes, that me and Robert, we've got an altar. There's a bitterness come between us. And we don't get along like we used to. We kind of avoid each other now. And our fellowship's not what it was at one time. And every time I see him, it wells back up inside of me what he did to me. Or vice versa. You say, hey, I got a situation just like that. What do I do? Well, Moses used a tree, but for my illustration today, can we just imagine today that this is a cross, much the same as the cross of Calvary? When you see a cross today, what do you think about? You don't think about just two pieces of wood, do you? You think about Jesus. So if I put God right in the middle of this matter that I cannot seem to get the victory over, I cannot seem to deal with, you know, every time I come in contact with Rob, what do I see now? I see Christ. Can I tell you something? If you put Christ in the middle of your situation, you're going to have a hard time being mad at Rob. Because every time you look for Rob, you say, man, every time I think about that now, I think about what Jesus did for us. Every time I want to try to bring that old bad feeling up, I want to try to bring it up, Rob, but you know, every time, man, I just think about, hey, I'm forgiven. And I'm going to forgive you. Even though, you know, it's really silly what went on, but, you know, when I think about what Jesus did, I think about Abraham. What did Abraham and Lot say? Abraham said, we be brethren. Abraham said, hey, this ain't worth it, man. I just want to be friends again. Every time you see Jesus, you're going to have a hard time getting beyond what Jesus did for you. Amen. Hey, a lot of people say, well, man, you just don't believe what he did. Hey, that's bitterness. You're going to have to learn to deal with it. Put Jesus in the middle of it. But the third thing is, real quickly, there's a realization of your water. There's a realization of your water. Man, I'm getting done way too fast, so I'm going to have to slow down. If we get out too early, then the preacher won't let me come back. Now, I like to come here. Y'all get a lot of really neat TV channels. Hey, I was in South Dakota in the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. I got 6 channels, all 6 PBSs. Seriously, I got 3 from one town, 3 from another town. I tell you what, I can't listen to but so many news anchors from London, England. Hey, the realization of your water. Look at your Bible again with me here. Verse 25, and he cried unto the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, which when he had cast it into the waters were made sweet. There he made for them a statute and ordinance, and there he proved them. Now let me tell you about the realization of your water. He didn't give them another water. Now it's simple, isn't it? God could have told Moses simply, say, well, turn and go due east 10 more miles, and there's good water there. God fixed the water that he had. Can I tell you that instead of you going out and trying to find a bunch of new friends when you have a bitterness coming between you and a friendship, why don't you let God fix the friends you got? I know some people back there where we from, they done went through every person in town. Hey, I'm not joking. Hey, my wife could tell you, we had a lady in our church. Bless her heart. Drove me crazy. But she loved somebody this week. Next week she'd hate them. And all of a sudden this was her best friend over here. And then 2 or 3 weeks later she'd hate them. And then she had a best friend over there. And then 2 or 3 weeks later she'd hate them. And then pretty soon she'd done run through the whole church. because something would come up, something would be said. And I like the story that Bobby Robertson told about him and Lester Roloff riding around one day, and they said Brother Roloff was awful for picking, and said him and Brother Bobby get to picking so bad sometimes and said they was going down the road picking and digging at each other, and said Brother Bobby said they got right quiet, and Brother Bobby felt bad about the thing. He said, Brother Roloff said, I'm sorry for what I said. I went too far with that. I shouldn't have said what I said. He said, oh, Brother Bobby, you ain't bothering me none. He said, you can't bother me. You can't say nothing that'll hurt me. Brother Bobby thought for a second, and then Brother Roloff said, you can't hurt a dead man. Aren't we supposed to die to self daily? Can I tell you, you can go down to the funeral home today, and you can walk in there, and any corpse, you can spit in their face, and they're not going to say nothing. You can smack them, and they're not going to say nothing. You can pick them up and shake them like that. They're not going to retaliate. You know why? Because they're dead. If we're supposed to die to self daily, amen, what y'all did yesterday was a dangerous thing. Now, serious now. It was not the traveling on the roadways that made it so dangerous. It was not going to a place where so many people that made it so dangerous. It was getting a bunch of saved folks together to try to do something together that was dangerous. Honestly. Because you know why? A little silly something will be said. Somebody takes the wrong way. And young people, I love young people. I used to be young a long time ago. I think I remember that. Sometimes old people's bad about dealing with things when somebody said something that kind of hurt their feelings, but young people don't know how to deal with it. Y'all not really ready to deal with stuff like that yet. And there for about 6 months you get old enough to do it, and then you get so old you just get mad at everything. So it's a bad cycle. What I'm saying is this: you need to learn now and say, look, Christianity and brothers and sisters in Christ is more important than a word said out of season at the wrong time when somebody's in a bad mood. Amen? Or somebody's just having a bad day. My wife told me we was coming across the country. I don't mind telling on myself. I'm telling on myself. You better not tell on me, but I can tell on me. It was the day before yesterday. I've been fighting these. I said at Sunday school, but I've been fighting these migraines for 3 days, and it ain't fun coming across the country. It's fun when you ain't got nothing else to do and you got plenty of time, and you say, well, we're going to drive about 5 hours a day, and then we're going to chill out, you know. Maybe get us a campground with a hot tub, and we chill out. Everything will be good. Hey, life is good. But when you get a call, and I'm not, Miss Marion, I'm thankful. Okay, you know my heart when I say this. I'm thankful. But when Brother Mark called the other day, and I looked and I said, we can do it. But I said, what did I just say? And I started doing the math, and I do know how to do math a little bit. I started doing the math, and I said, well, you know, that's going to be 2 12s and a 5. That's 2 12-hour days and a 5-hour day. To get here yesterday so I wouldn't be so late getting here. You say, well, that's just driving 12 hours. It's driving 12 hours, dragging a single wide mobile home behind you. And the first day I was okay. I had rested pretty good. And then the next day I didn't do so good. I just having a bad day. And my wife looked at me and she said, I really don't know why you're having such a bad day today. You keep on. Keep on. Don't listen to her. Troublemaker. I was just having one of them bad days. She didn't say, I ain't going to speak to him no more today. we stopped. I said, I'm sorry. I said, I don't know why. I don't feel good. I'm tired of this road. I just don't feel good. You know what? She worked the rest of the day trying to build a bridge, because I just felt bad. Now, she feels bad sometimes, and I've tried to. You see the point I'm trying to make? I see so many couples that just one of them's having a bad day, and the other one's drop dead. I don't care. Don't we see that? Y'all know people like that? Janine, I know you and Kevin are already like that. It's okay. Hey, you see how, the point I'm trying to make is this: how easily Christian fellowship gets messed up. Because we're all made out of the same stuff. And you don't always have good days. And I don't always have good days. And sometimes, like a chain, a bunch of bad days get strung together. Now, I don't know why y'all let me get off talking about myself like that, but He didn't give them another water. He fixed the water they had. He not only made it usable, but He made it bearable. He went a little farther than that. He even made it sweet. I'm saying that whatever you're dealing with today, God's not going to replace that with something else, but He will make the problem that you're dealing with right now bearable. He'll make it usable, and He can actually make it sweet. Now, let's get down a little bit deeper here to right where we live. Many will not deal with bitterness because of three things. Let me give you these three things. And this is just what I have observed over time. Many will not deal with bitterness because, number one, they are ashamed. Sometimes people are bitter at God. See, have you ever seen anybody that was mad at God? I have. I've seen people that not only got mad at God, but they stayed bitter with God. After a period of time, they become ashamed of that, but they still don't know how to deal with it. I've seen people that were not only bitter at God, but they were bitter with God. In other words, they didn't just get mad at God for one thing, but they stay mad at God about some things. We have a family in North Carolina that we've been good friends with. I've known them all my life. I've known this young man since he was a kid. 33 years old. He had some type of routine surgery, and he was home from the hospital, and he had a blood clot, and he died. 33 years old. He's got a baby due in January. Another baby. I think this will be his third child. And it's another baby due in January. And then we check the obituary. I mean, when you get old, you do that. You check obituaries. See if anybody we know died. I've got them bookmarked on my phone. I've got them bookmarked in my computer, and I check them because they put them on there. And I looked, and I thought, that name sounds familiar. Why does that name sound so familiar? And I read the obituary. And I saw where just a week later his mother passed away. He died. He was 33 years old. Now she suffered with bad health for years. But now here my friend Ed Clements has had to bury a son, and now has to bury a wife. And he's got a new grandbaby coming in January. And all these things at one time. Now I know Ed, and I think I know Ed's temperament, and I know his heart well enough to know that he's not going to get bitter over this thing. But I'm telling you, the best of people would begin to say, I wonder why this is happening. The best of people will say, is there something maybe that I've done wrong? You see, when troublesome times come, we begin to question ourselves. We begin to look within ourselves and see, is there something going on? Now, I'm not saying that we should, if you die daily, you need to inspect daily. You need to inspect your life daily, but I don't believe there's any sin in that family's life. Can I tell you this? The next time something really bad happens, Don't get mad at God. Don't get mad with God. Can I tell you that whatever happens in your life, God allowed that to happen? I think a lot about when bad things happen. I think about Job. Surely Job at some point, it must have crossed his mind, did I do something wrong? But when you think about Job, think about this verse. When God was having a conversation with Satan, he said, have you considered my servant Job? And then when something bad happens to you, just say, well, maybe today God asked the devil, have you considered my servant? And put your name right there. And say, God allowed that to happen for a reason. God's trying to teach me something. God's trying to help me with something that I'm going to have to face later on. Can I tell you that some people get ashamed? They're bitter at themselves. You know the hardest person to forgive is you. But sometimes people get bitter with themselves, and when you think back on these things, they get a little bit ashamed about it. Sometimes they're bitter over something that seems so insignificant now. You ever had something happen and years later you say, man, that's pretty goofy. That's pretty goofy. You know, that we even had that problem. Why did we let something like that come in our life? When I was a little boy, my cousin hit me in the head with a Tonka truck. He said, now we know what's wrong with you, right? I got a scar up here because my cousin hit me in the head with a Tonka truck. Now, we oftentimes talk about that and laugh about it when we don't ever see each other anymore, but when we did, he'd always seem to bring that up. And we get to picking back and forth, and he said, I hit you in the head with a Tonka truck again. But, I could have said, well, he hit me in the head with a Tonka truck one time. I ain't going to ever talk to him no more. He hit me in the head. I can't believe he hit me. I got a scar because he hit me in the head. Wouldn't that be so, that'd be so ignorant, wouldn't it? I wonder what little things we hold on to like that we hold people hostage with. Amen. Our children used to tickle me so bad. They get me mad, but now I look back on it and I laugh because their young'uns are just like it. But, I'd be driving down the road and I'd hear things like, your feet stink, get your feet out of my face. And we had 3 girls now. And I'll tell you, you say, well, girls are so sweet, and I wish I had girls. No, you don't. They're mean. Get your feet stink. She's got her feet stuck in my face. And all this and that and the other. And we saw this little thing on Facebook the other day. It was 3 car seats and had 3 partitions, like bathroom partitions bit between them. I said, that looks like something I'd do right there. But those girls, they get around each other now and they laugh about that stuff, and they're having to deal with it with their children now. But it'd be kind of silly to look back on some of that stuff and say, I ain't never going to speak to you again because of what you did to me. Second thing is, a lot of people never deal with bitterness because they feel justified. Most people that are bitter feel justified in their bitterness. They say things like this, I have a right to be bitter. I've been hurt. And this is my all-time favorite, you just do not understand. I used to tell people when I was a pastor, I understand a lot more than you think I do. But people would usually say, I am this way because of something that someone did to me, and you just don't understand how bad I've been hurt. I know life is full of hurts. Y'all know that, don't you? Life is full of disappointments. I told my middle girl when she got ready to get married, they didn't have a window to throw it out of. They didn't have anything. I mean, they just thought they was just so in love and everything was, cherries and ice cream and everything was going to always be great. And they left our house one Saturday morning, and I said, "What y'all going to do today?" He said, "Well, we're going to Greensboro to pick out a modular home." I said, "Do Daddy one favor." "What is it, Daddy?" I said, "Do not sign anything." Okay. Well, they came back in late that afternoon, early that night, and they were so excited. They had a set of house plans. They had all this contract and everything, and thank the Lord they didn't sign anything. But I looked at all that and I said, how you plan on paying for this? Well, the man up there said our payments wouldn't be but so much a month. And I said, she ain't even got a job yet. Well, we're projecting what she'll make. I thought, yeah, I think your bulb burned out in your projector. So they had all this figures, and I said, okay. I said, somebody's got to be the bad guy. I sat down with a piece of paper, and I said, okay, you make this much, how much you project she's going to make, and I did all this, and I said, okay, your power bill's going to be this much, your water bill's going to be this much, your cell phone bill's going to be this much, you got one car payment already, and then we got to have this, and we got to have this, and we got to have that, and then we got to have a house payment, and then we got to have some groceries. How much you reckon y'all going to spend on groceries? And then we went through all that. And then I turned it around and I showed it to them because I do know how to do math. And they found out that house payment they was going to have was going to leave them like $1.50 to pay everything else with. No way, it's impossible. So they sit there and they cried like two little babies. I said, when y'all get done crying, we'll talk about second choices. I said, y'all need to understand that life is full of second choices. What is your second choice? This is pie in the sky stuff here. You can't afford this. What are you going to do? You ain't living with me. I told him, I said, you ain't living here. I said, what's your second choice? Well, we don't know what to do. I said, well, good. I'm glad I know what to do. I said, I have found you a repossessed single wide over here in Roxburgh. There's something that you can actually afford. And they thought, when they saw that, they thought that was the best thing. They thought that they liked that a whole lot better than they did the modular when they found out what the payments was going to be. And our daughter's still living in it with 3 children today. Thank the Lord. I'm glad that's what they got. But they had to learn that life is full of second choices. Can I tell you that your relationships are so important that you need to realize that no matter how many times you've been disappointed, there's still a second choice. They feel justified. The last thing, they won't deal with bitterness because they feel lost. They've been bitter so long, it's become a part of their life. They've gotten used to drinking bitter water. You know, some people get used to drinking bitter water. We go to a place sometimes and we say, man, how do y'all drink this water? I'm not used to drinking water that's got chlorine in it. And I drink chlorinated water, and it's just like taking a big swallow of pool water to me. It just about makes me sick to my stomach. I said, how do y'all drink this water? They said, what's wrong with it? They've got used to it. We had a family in our church took us out to a really nice Mexican restaurant one time. I mean, first class, cloth, tablecloths, whole deal, right? And this was a really high-class place for us because it wasn't what we was used to. And we was coming back out across the parking lot, and my baby girl, she's about that high right then, and the man's name was Tony. He patted Laura on the head, and he said, Laura, so what'd you think about that? She said, oh, it was okay. It's okay. He said, what do you mean okay? I mean, I thought it was pretty good. She said, oh, it was okay. She said, I like the real stuff. That's the way she said it. I like the real stuff. He said, the real stuff. What do you mean? Where do you get the real Mexican food at, honey? She said, Taco Bell. She'd eat so much of that Alpo that she thought that was the real thing. She'd got a taste for it. Seriously. Now, I wonder with bitterness, if you've had so long now, it's like second nature. You go into Walmart, you pull in the parking lot. I'm finishing, Pam. This is me finishing. Where is she? She's gone. She'll get her. Thank you. You may perhaps You pull in the parking lot at Walmart. Y'all got a big Walmart here, but we used to have a smaller Walmart. I'd pull in sometimes and I'd see somebody's car and I said, man, that's the last person today I want to see. A lot of people will see that car and they'll just drive right on through the parking lot. No matter what they got to have, we'll get it later. I don't want to have to deal with them. We'll just get it later. We do it, don't we? You know what? If we do this right here, say, you know, they about aggravate me to death. But I'm just going to put God right in the middle of this thing. Because you know what? It's not working out the way I'm dealing with it. So I'm going to let God take care of it. If you put God in the middle of it, it might not be too pleasant the first couple of times. I'm honest with you now. But you see them and you're going to have to force it. You're going to have to force it. But you know, after a while, you'll get the victory over that thing. Amen. You say, man, how you doing, buddy? How's work going? You doing okay? Your family healthy? Man, it's good to see you. And you can really be able to say that after a few times. That's right. Them first few times, it's going to be a struggle. Oh, yeah. You're going to have to almost lie. But after you do it a couple times, you know why? Because you got the victory. That's right. And they ain't leave and be bitter and be mad and all they want to be. But you know what? You got the victory. I had a man in my church. I'm done. I had a man in my church. He left. He left wrong. He left the church and he left wrong. And he hurt my family and he hurt some other families in the church. And I hadn't done anything wrong. I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. But I got so burdened about that thing. I'd see that man on the street. He was a mail carrier, and I'd meet him in his mail car, and I'd wave at him, and he wouldn't even wave at me. He'd turn his head. He would live physically and live turn his head the other way so he wouldn't have to look at me. I went one day, and I told Diane, I said, I'll be back in just a little bit. I got to go run air, and I'll be back. Didn't even tell her where I was going. I went to his house and pulled up in the yard and walked up on the porch. His wife came to the door, and I asked her, I said, I'd like to see your husband for a minute if I could. She didn't invite me in. He came out on the porch, and I said, look, man, I said, I just want to say something, and I said, I just want you to know my heart. I said, if I've done anything at all to hurt your family, if I've done anything at all to wrong you in any way, would you please forgive me? I had never had nobody tell me this before, Brother Mike. He said, I'll think about it. And he went back in the house and slammed the door. Now, I could have said, I don't care what you do. But you know what I did? I left there with victory. Because I had a peace. Because what I did that day was I took God and I put Him right in the middle of that. And I can see that man now. Whenever I'm around, I can wave, man, I can run the window down and wave at him now. If he decides he wants to look the other way and not wave at me, that's fine. But you know what? I did what God told me to do. Our heads about